All right, now that we're ready to begin painting our designs, just a couple of notes about painting. I have a number of different types of brushes that you guys can use to paint your project. So, be thoughtful about like what exactly you're using for what section. If you're painting a really big shape, you can use a bigger brush. If you're painting a medium-sized shape, you might use a medium-sized brush, and then small shape, small brush, okay? And think about which one makes the most sense. You should be able to be in control of the paint at all times. And if you're not, you either need to change brushes or you need to have less paint on your brush. You should only have paint from the middle point of the bristles down. The paint should never, ever, ever be going up into the metal part. If it is, it's gonna end up on your fingers and you're gonna end up making a huge mess. And it's also going to end up being out of control on your brush, and you're gonna end up painting it in a place that you didn't mean to. So the paint, and I'll show you this once I start painting, should just be from the halfway up the bristles down. Really shouldn't be any further than that, so that you can be completely in control of it at all times. So this is a really big test of your neatness and your focus on that. And I know that everybody's at a different level for that, but that's something that we all need to work on, right? Is really paying attention to our neatness when we're painting, right? Some types of painting we can be more free. For this project though, we are being really particular, and I want you guys to paint clearly within each of these shapes. Okay, so also the paints, you guys will have them on separate plates. Never, ever, ever should the red or the yellow or the blue get contaminated. They should all just be those particular colors. That means that you guys need to be cleaning your brushes extremely well before, changing colors on that brush. So make sure that you guys are doing that because I have other classes that are going to use the same plate. Same thing with the white and the black. The white should stay white. The black should stay black. There shouldn't be any cross-contamination of colors in there, because then I end up wasting a bunch of paint. And so I need every single person's help to clean their brush really, really well before you guys go into another color, okay? All right, so most of the project, I don't really think that I'm gonna be using the bigger brushes for anything. I'm probably gonna be using more of the medium and the small brushes for the entire painting. So you can grab yourself whichever ones you feel like you're most comfortable using. And then I'm gonna start, it really doesn't matter where you start on your project, where you start painting. I do have some mixing papers that you guys may or may not find handy. These are really nice reminders of how to go about mixing the tints and shades for the primary colors, how to mix the secondary colors, and then how to make the tints and shades for the secondary colors. And I even have a sheet that has all 6 intermediate colors. So some kids find these really helpful. I will never collect these for a grade. These end up going in the trash. They're just like your painter's palette that's disposable. But some kids find them really annoying, and they might, just use a blank piece of paper instead from the free draw box. But you can put your name on them and use them class after class. We can at least try that. Sometimes I end up having to throw them away if they don't dry. But you can definitely use them if they help you, because I'll show you what I mean. For example, when you go to mix, obviously you don't have to mix red, so you don't have to paint anything here, right? Red is a primary, so you just paint with it right out of the bottle. But when you go to mix your tint, it reminds you to add white, right? Well, actually you want to start with white and add a little bit of red. Remember, when you mix a lighter color, you always start with a lighter color, so always start with white. When you make the shade, start with the lighter, which would be the hue, red, add black to it, right? Okay, and then, so that's for the primaries, they're all like that. For the secondary colors, it'll tell you red plus blue, right? Which 2 primaries you mix, and then it will remind you for the tint, start with white and add the purple or the violet to it. Shade, add black, right? So it reminds you of all those. Like I said, same thing on the intermediate colors. So for blue violet, it's red plus extra blue, right? There's more blue in blue violet than there is red. And then I also will have color wheels out on the tables for you guys to double check your colors. You can check your colors against mine. These are using the same paint, so they should be pretty accurate. So when you mix a red violet, if you're like, ugh, I have no idea if it's a red violet or not, you can find red violet. This is the hue. The hue has the label on it. The tint is on the outside here, and this is the shade on the inside. So hue, tint, and shade. So you can always double check your colors. Your hue should be the same, just about. Your tint might be lighter. It might be a lighter value of that color. Your shade might be a lighter value or a darker value of that color, but it just has to look like it fits in that spot on your wheel, or you won't get credit for it, right? It has to be red violet has to be more red than violet, and it has to be more violet than red. It has to look like it fits right in between those two colors on the wheel. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna start painting maybe in the yellow section, and I'm gonna get the whole section painted before I move on to anything else. So I have yellow here on the mixing paper. I don't need you to paint anything here. This is just for mixing. This is just your painter's palette. So I'm gonna position my paper so that I'm comfortable, and I want you to notice how much paint I have on the brush, right? I only have it from the midway on the bristles down. I do not have it any further up. If I do, I don't have control over it. So you guys need to be doing that same exact thing. Remember, you're holding the brush like a pencil. That's why there's like a gripper like that on there. We don't hold the brush at the tip like this at the end, and we don't hold it, you know, in some weird kind of way. You always want to hold it just like a pencil, because you already know how to use a pencil. So you should be able to use a brush very easily, use those same skills. So here's my yellow section. It's right here. And I'm gonna start painting the hue area first, because I have the hue, the pure color. And I'm doing my best to stay in the lines. Take your time. It's completely possible for every single person in here to get most of the paint in the lines on this project, as long as you're focused. So this is not a project that we're gonna be talking to our friends as much as we want, right? This is one where you are really focused, because if you're talking to your friends, you're messing up your project probably, and you're probably messing theirs up too. So if the yellow's across the table and you need it to get a little bit on your paper, like I just took a little glob and I just put it here, and then I can just kind of like go back into that, get some yellow, paint it on, and I can just use my paper, what I have on my paper, to get more. Just a little trick. It'll make your life a lot easier, make things go quicker. All right, so I'm almost done painting the hue. And once I'm done with that, I'm gonna mix the tint and the shade and paint those on. All right, so I don't think I'm gonna use this brush for mixing. I'm gonna set it down. I'm actually gonna use probably like a different brush. I really like these brushes for mixing. So I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna add a glob of yellow to my tint spot on here. And I'm gonna add a glob of yellow to my shade spot. Okay, and I'm just gonna take a little bit away from the tint, because we wanna really wanna start with the white first there. So look how much paint I added onto here. I have a decent amount of paint. I'm gonna clean my brush. Remember, never go into another color without cleaning your brush. And when you clean your brush, quick review on that, never are we tapping our brush on the side of the container, because you'll give all of your friends a shower, and that's not very nice. So bounce it off the bottom gently, and then you can press the bristles on the inside of the bucket, and also you can use a paper towel to get rid of the excess water. We don't need water for these paints. These paints work, these tempera paints work without water. So now I'm gonna grab a glob of white, and I'm gonna put it down here in the tint section, and I can take some yellow and start mixing the yellow and the white together. So as long as the tint looks lighter than the hue, it's a lighter value than the hue, it's probably good. And it's okay if you go out of the spot on here a little bit. Really doesn't bother me. I'm not grading the mixing papers. The mixing papers, remember, eventually get thrown away. And so then I can take my brush and I can start painting in the tint. Remember, paint only halfway up on the brush. So I labeled this section only to be my tint, and as I'm painting it on, I'm looking, it is definitely lighter than my hue. And I want that. If it's not noticeably lighter, it's like, what's the point of taking the time to mix a different value of yellow or of any of the colors? You just like wasted the time doing that if it's not different. So you want to make sure it is different. So start with white, add some of that hue to it, and then once you're happy with it, paint it on. Now I am painting on the Sharpie. You can see I'm getting some paint on the Sharpie, that's fine. We'll go over that when we're all done. So I have my tint of yellow done. So I'm gonna clean my brush. And now I'm ready to do my shade of yellow. So black is the most powerful of all the colors. I can't stress that enough. So when I go to, and yellow is the weakest. So when I go to mix it, I'm gonna grab like, you can't even see that, but it is like the tiniest amount of black. And when I go to mix it with the yellow over here, that teeny tiny amount is gonna make such a big difference. And if you really want a little bit more, clean your brush, take a glob. You could set a glob somewhere like outside of that spot and then just add it as you need it. A shade of yellow is almost like a weird greenish color, but it's actually like a dark yellow. That's what a dark yellow looks like. So once I have it all mixed and I know for sure that it's darker than my hue, you can check that out, definitely darker than the hue, then I know that I'm ready to start painting it on. So I have a clean brush for painting. I'm gonna get some on the end of the bristles there. Remember, lower half of the bristles only, not the entire way up and into the metal portion. And then I can start very, very carefully painting that on in the shapes that I decided that I wanted to be there for the shade. Okay, so there's my yellow section, it's totally done. So now I can move on to any other section that I want, right? You're just gonna do the whole section before you move on. All right, so now that I'm done with yellow, I'm just gonna keep moving around my color wheel. You might choose to go, directly around, or maybe you kind of hop around colors. I think I'm gonna go to yellow green next, which is an intermediate color. And here it is on my mixing sheet. And so when you're doing an intermediate color, if you need help, it shows you need extra yellow, right? Blue plus yellow, so more yellow than you do blue. And remember, you always want to start with the lighter of the two colors. So I'm gonna grab myself a big old blob of yellow, and I'm almost gonna like wipe it off in that spot. I'm gonna do it again, grab a bunch of yellow, because I'm not only gonna use this paint that I mix here for my hue, but I'm gonna use it for my tint and my shade too. So we're doing yellow green. So we want a ton of yellow and a teeny tiny little bit of blue. So I have a big blob down here. I'm gonna clean my brush. Remember, bounce the brush off the bottom of the container gently, and then press the bristles on the inside. Use your paper towel if you need to. Never tap on the side of the water container. And I'm gonna start off, I'm not sure how much blue I'm gonna need, so I'm just gonna like grab a glob and I'm just gonna like put it here in the intermediate, like right on top where it says intermediate. You can see my huge blob of yellow. Then I don't have to keep going back. Once I start adding my blue, I might add just like the teeniest bit, and if I'm not sure, like if I need more, I don't have to go back into the paper plate, clean my brush, go through that whole step. I can just get extra from here. So I'm just gonna take what's on my brush, which is like almost none, and start mixing it with the yellow, because remember, yellow green needs to be lighter than green but have, you know, a little bit of a green hue to it because it is, you know, I mean, green's in the title, right? So it's not quite green, but it's not yellow either. And so I want to compare that with like my yellow green on my color wheel. Remember, use the color wheels. You might paint like a little area. It's like double check, and I'm comparing right now my yellow green that I painted to the yellow green on the wheel right here, and they look really close. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm actually gonna use another brush to paint. So I'm gonna move on to my yellow green section. I'm gonna start painting my hue area first. Feel free to always turn the wheel, turn your design so that you can paint it comfortably. Making sure that I'm painting on the yellow-green segment of my design, and where I decided to paint my hue, which is like this background area, so I'm gonna paint that. Just gonna switch to a smaller brush. I feel like I'm getting out of the spaces. Even though I had the paint only on the lower half of the bristles, I was just kind of getting out of the spaces. Too much bristle to deal with. Smaller brush is just easier sometimes. All right, and I am painting on the Sharpie area, right? That's okay, that's kind of like nice to have the Sharpie. So I have my hue painted. Now I'm gonna mix my, my tint and my shade. Okay, so tint is gonna go here. We're gonna add white. So we're gonna do always the lighter color first. I have a clean brush. I just went in, I got some white. I'm gonna get like a nice blob of it. I'm gonna put that blob down in here. I'm just almost like wiping it off in that area. And then I'm gonna take, I already have yellow green, right? So I'm taking some of this yellow green and I'm just gonna mix it with the white. Always start with less than you think you need, and then if you need more, always go back and add more, but you can't take it away once it's added. So I can definitely tell that my yellow-green tint is lighter than my hue. You can very clearly see that. So, and I know that this was yellow-green. I had already checked that. So now I'm gonna take my brush that I'm painting with, clean it, and I'm gonna start painting in my tint of yellow-green on my project. Pay really close attention to the quality of your painting, staying inside the lines, taking your time. Paint should only be on the lower half of the bristles. All right, so I have my tint done, and now I have to do my shade. So I'm gonna clean my brushes. And so remember, the shade is gonna go here, and that's like adding black. So we already have yellow green to start with. And remember, you always start with the lighter of the two colors, and the hue is always going to be the lighter. When you're mixing a shade, black is the darkest of all of the colors. So I'm gonna take some more of this yellow green, which I have left over from when I mixed it. I already know that it's yellow green. If I needed to mix it fresh, then I could do that and just double check it on the color wheel that I have here out on the table for you guys. So check it before you just mix it, because even if you add black to it and it's wrong, if it's wrong before you add black, it's gonna be wrong after you add black. So make sure you always check that. And now I'm gonna get some black. You can take a big glob if you want and like set it on your paper, and then you have some extra to use later if you'd like. So I'm gonna take just a teeny tiny little bit. Remember, black is super, super powerful. Start mixing it in with my yellow green, and instantly that tiny, tiny bit made a difference. I think I'm gonna make mine just a little bit darker. Mix up your little pile there. Try to keep it in a circle. Try to keep it in one little area so that you know where all your paint is. And then you can see it's definitely darker than my hue. I know if I know it's darker, then I know it's probably right to paint it on there. And then I'm gonna start painting it on where I designated my shade to go. All right, so now I have my yellow and my yellow-green sections painted.